Hey everybody, Rachel here from RachelTheStamper.com, and today I'm going to show you how I made these absolutely gorgeous swap cards for an upcoming swap that I am part of, featuring the really gorgeous Blended Season stamp set and Stitched Season die set. Now this set is only available from August 1st till the 31st. So if you want to be able to get this, go ahead right to my online store. You can get it there at rachelthestamper.stampinup.net. So to make this really lovely card, we try to do some card swaps where basically we try to think of ideas of something to do with a card that maybe someone else would be able to use that they hadn't thought of. So I'm going to take this card out to show you because it does have a couple layers to it. And I did color this in using the Stampin' Blends, which absolutely turned out great. And the other thing that I did was I used the piece that I cut out to fill in the inside of this. So it turned out so adorable. So let me show you what we did. And I do think the color combination of this, which is Bermuda Bay and Grapefruit Grove, is just absolutely gorgeous. It's very bright and fun and summery. Okay, so to get started, we have a panel of Bermuda Bay, and this is 5.5 by 4.25 by 11 scored at 5.5. Sorry about that. So 4.25 by 11 scored at 5.5. So we have one panel of that. Then we also have a panel of Grapefruit Grove, and this is cut at 4 by 5.25. And then we have another piece, and I did one ahead of time, but I wanted to be able to show you guys. I have another piece of Shimmery Whisper White, and this is cut the same. So this is 4 by 5.25. And the reason I did that was when I layered these together originally, I was going to have the Grapefruit Grove go to the edge, but when I trimmed it up to have the color combination with the Grapefruit Grove and the Bermuda Bay was really very pretty and very striking, so I decided to trim it up a little bit. So that also kind of lends to these layers lining up exactly instead of trying to figure out what you want to do with it. So we have those two layers. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what I did. I did already go ahead and color one of these in, but I'm going to show you exactly how I stamped it because it worked out really well with the Stamparatus to be able to do all the layers of it. So I'm going to set these on the side, and I'm going to keep this here just for reference. Now what I did was I used the largest layer for this to be able to trim out this little layer that's going to go here. And the cool part about this is it's double stitched, so both pieces will have stitching detail to them. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run this through the Big Shot real quick. So all you're going to do, and I just kind of eyeballed these, and I did do 8 of them, but it did end up turning out pretty well, that it was very difficult, not very difficult to do. So what I'm going to do is I kind of just line these up. Kind of just eyeballed it again straight. I just wanted it to be fairly symmetric. You could certainly put a piece of washi tape if you wanted to keep it absolutely still on there. Okay, and then I'm going to just put my cutting plate on top, and I'm going to cut this out. Okay, so I have that. So as you can see, it cuts out both layers, and both layers have stitching. So your frame layer has stitching. And I wasn't going to use this originally, the cut piece, but I thought it would be really pretty on the inside. So I did use this as well. So we're going to have both of those. And then the other thing I did was I'm going to take this little flower with the leaf, and I'm going to trim a piece out. And I actually did this just with a little scrap of old olive. Of course, I don't have a scrap handy because I kind of used all my scraps up for that one. So I'm going to just trim a little piece out and trim this up. So put that on there. And then we're going to just run this through the Big Shot. Okay. And I have been trying lately to run things face up. That way I can see when they're cut. So if you're ever having difficulties with a die that you use, maybe one that's a little bit more intricate and you can't quite tell if it's cut, if you run it facing up, you'll see if it actually cuts all the way through. And then the other thing I did was I had already cut out another, let me just pop this out with my paper piercer. I cut out another flower out of white, and I just trimmed it to the edges, and I've gone ahead and colored that in with the Stampin' Right markers, but I'm going to show you that as well once we get to that part. So let me just move the Big Shot out of the way. Okay, so this is going to be my panel. And essentially what I did was I set a lot of this stuff up ahead of time using the Stamparatus because I did do multiple cards. So it was very easy to be able to keep multiple cards in line. Okay, so I have a couple of my plates that are already kind of lined up here. So I'm going to just work around them. That way I can show you the other piece that I did. So I'm going to end up taking off, let's see which one will be easier. I think it'll be easier to take off these. So I have my little branch and my flowers. And these are actually from a completely different stamp set. And I will show you those in just a moment. But I want to show you with your Stamparatus, when you're using a clear mount stamp, such as this, you want to take off that little foam layer, okay? So essentially what I did was I took all of these cards and I put them in the corner here. Let me move this up so you can see it a little bit better. I put them in the corner here. This is where I how I decided to start it. And I put my stamping platform in. Oops. And then I kind of laid this on top, and this, I'm just going to mirror it so you can see what I did. But I laid this on. You're going to put your piece of, put your magnet down, I should say, to hold the paper down while you pick up the stamp. So that way you had this perfectly positioned, and every time you stamp it, you can stamp it over and over and over again. You're not going to have any issues with it being mislined or lined up incorrectly. So I'm going to go ahead and take my panel of Whisper White. And again, I'm just going to line this up to the corner. I'm going to add my magnet in here. And again, you really probably only need one. So I am going to use Memento ink for this because we are inking this to be able to color with the Stampin' Blends. But if you're not going to use the Stampin' Blends, you could also use Stays On. So I'm just going to pull this off just so you can see. But I'm basically going to ink the stamp up really nicely. And it isn't going to fit on the entire thing, and that's okay because I kind of had it cut off so it looked like a frame. So I'm going to just slide this back in, and then all you're going to do is just press on your image. So with the Stamparatus, just because there might have been a little bit of confusion, you definitely still do have to press on it, but it's really easy. So for example, this part did not stamp correctly. So all I'm going to do is just push this back in and put some more pressure on the bottom. But you definitely do have to press. It's still, you know, it's not effortless stamping, but it definitely makes things very much easier. So for some reason, this is just a little bit dotty here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my stamp and I'm going to re-ink it up again because this stamp pad does need to be inked a little bit. It's a teeny bit dry. And then I'm going to just lay it back down again. And since we have the magnet in place, we will re-ink up our image. Look how perfect that is. Completely perfect. So now you could take out another panel, you could flip it, you could stamp another one if you wanted to, but it makes it super, super easy. And I might have judged this just a teeny bit off from where I did my original, but I'm going to show you anyway. And again, now with using the oh my goodness, the Memento ink, if you have a baby wipe handy, you could just wipe it off with a baby wipe. Or you could use your Simply Chamois, works really, really well. But I didn't wet it ahead of time, so my apologies. I do usually use the Simply Chamois because I think that it really gets in the nooks and crannies of the stamps so much better than any other tool that I've actually used. And quite honestly, I have used baby wipes before, and I do find, depending on some of the brands, they do leave them a little linty. So I really do like the Simply Chamois. So I'm going to go ahead and put this plate back in because we are going to use this for our other stamp. I'm going to line this up. And then the other stamps that I used were actually photopolymer. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back in here. That way when we're ready for it, I'm going to close this and I'm going to just lift this one off. We can use that as well. I'm going to pop these stamps up here so I don't forget. So what I did, originally, again, I wasn't going to use the inside of this. So what I did was I'm going to just use the little leaf pattern, and this is in the same stamp set, and I thought it would be fun to do something one of two ways. Now you can do this whatever way you want depending on what inks you do or don't have handy. You could either do it in Grapefruit Grove if you'd like. So if you did, it's just tone on tone stamping, and I just kind of stamped once, and then before re-inking I stamped more than once. So you could do that. Or if you didn't have Grapefruit Grove or whatever color you decided that you wanted to use and you wanted it to coordinate, the other thing you could do is you could also use Versamark. So Versamark is a watermarking ink. So all you would do is you take your pad of Versamark and you just ink it up. Nope, this pad might be just a tad bit dry. There we go. So it definitely does give you a little bit of a lighter color using the Versamark, but you do still have a color contrast. So if you want something a little bit lighter, you could use the Versamark. If you want something darker, you could go with a coordinated color. Now, since I started out with the coordinated color, I'm going to go ahead back and re-ink that. And the Versamark isn't going to hurt my stamp, so I don't mind not cleaning it off. So I'm just going to add in a few more leaves. Okay, just like that, and that's perfect. And let me just wipe off my mat because the other day I didn't, and I ended up getting goopy stuff all over my stamp that I didn't want there. Okay, so we are going to keep this handy because we're going to use this, and we're going to use some crumb cake a little bit later. So this is going to be our layer. And what I wanted to do was, now you definitely want to wait for this to dry fully because you can use Memento ink when you're using your stamping blends. However, if you use StazOn, it will bleed because StazOn is an alcohol-based ink. So you just want to make sure that if you're using your blends, that you use something that will not bleed when you use them. So I'm going to just show you a few things that I did. I'm not going to color the whole card, but just to basically give you a little bit more information. So what I did was I used the light Daffodil Delight and then the light Pumpkin Pie. And what I did was I colored in the centers of the flowers with those. Just add a little bit of Daffodil Delight. And then a little bit of pumpkin pie. And again, you could use whichever tip you're more comfortable with. I just kind of wanted to add in a little bit more color between the two. So there you can see those. Very pretty. And then for the leaves, I kind of started out with a bunch of different colors and I ended up narrowing it down to 3 favorites. So what I used was the light and the dark Granny Apple Green, and then the light Old Olive. And I think they really worked very well together. So what I did was I started off with the light Granny Apple Green, and then I just added a little bit of the light Old Olive if I felt it needed it. So I'm going to just show you on one of these leaves. And you could do it, I did it for all of them. I even did it for the little vine. But what I kind of do is I pick a spot to start with. So we'll just go with just those guys there. And then I went back in with the darker Granny Apple Green and kind of just added in a little bit of highlights in certain spots. And then I filled in a few of the spots. And then I went back again, whoops, with the light Granny Apple Green. Kind of just blended them out a little bit. And then if you wanted to, you could add in the Old Olive. But I thought the Old Olive worked out a lot better when you did it for a larger leaf. So once again, I'm going to start with the light Granny Apple Green. Bring it over just a little. And then I kind of added in a little bit of like the vine lines and like the veining that you would see. Just like that. So I'm going to, again, blend this out a little bit just to blend these together. And then I'm going to show you what I'll do on the other side if you wanted to add in the Old Olive. So again, this is just the light Granny Apple Green that I have there. And then I'm going to use actually the pointier tip. So I'm going to bring in a little bit of the Old Olive. Okay, and then if you wanted to, you could go back with a little bit of the light Granny Apple Green. And I think I picked the dark one by accident. Yep, of course I did. Go with the light Granny Apple Green and just blend it off. So this gave a really beautiful card, okay? And I apologize, I know it is like raining cats and dogs here, so if you can't hear me well, it's because of the crazy rain. So then, one other thing I did with doing the flowers, and I did this again several different ways. I started off a few different ways. I have the light Bermuda Bay, and then I have the light and the dark Pool Party, okay? So both of those, so what I did was I started 2 ways, and I found that I liked it best this way. So I started with the pen tip of the Bermuda Bay, and I started with the lines here, and I just kind of traced the lines and just a teeny bit around the deep part of the flower. Just a little bit. And then I went over it with the dark Pool Party just to bring those lines out a little bit. Again, not doing the full flower. And I did these in steps, so I just worked on 1 flower at a time when I did these. Then I'm going to come in with the light Pool Party. And I'm just blending, again, out a little bit to the edges. But instead of finishing there, what I did was I grabbed the dark Pool Party. And this kind of is subjective. You'll find that you do this better as you go along. And then brought in the light Pool Party and blended it out. So same thing again. So I started with the light on the edges. And there's even a couple spots where I didn't fill anything in because I thought it looked cooler that way. Like it gave a better highlighting. And then once again, just blend out your light Pool Party. Same thing. So that was light. I'll add just a little bit of dark here. Kind of leaving a light spot where your flower would have light on it. Once again, we went with light. Okay, and then I'm going to just bring a little bit of dark. I never went on the whole flower. That way it would give the illusion like it was lit. If that makes sense. And just the last one. Now, I will tell you one thing. This is not dried 100% because the black is not as crisp as it normally would be. Bring a little bit of this up right there. Okay, so there is your flower. And again, I did that all the way for the stems and I did it for the buds as well. But one other thing that I thought really gave a little bit of a flair to this is I outlined it with the light smoky slate, and then I kept my eraser handy just in case. So what I did was, again, starting, this is going to look a little bit different because the black is not as dry as it should be. So I took my light smoky slate and I just traced just outside of the black ink. And again, you want to kind of stick with a small section at a time. And then I went in with the eraser or the blender pen and I kind of softened the edge of it. Just like so. To kind of give a depth to the flower. And I learned this from my friend Linda Cullen. She did this last year with that really cute elf that was in the holiday catalog. And it really, really made the flowers, or made the elf, I should say, pop off of the page that she colored. So again, that is what you're going to want to do. If you can see, you have your layers there. But when you look at it in person, it really, when it's fully colored, it gives a lot of depth to it, like the flowers are popping off the page. And then, of course, I added in a little bit of Wink of Stella. So let me just show you how to finish off this card. And we will put this all together. So what we're going to do is, I did this the other day. I kind of did it two different ways. I kind of oopsed it up. Normally what I would have done is to stamp the sentiment ahead of time before I attached this, but I forgot when I was putting them together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what I did instead. So let me just move these blends out of the way. So I'm going to grab, I have a couple different parts for this. So I'm going to grab my inside piece of my stitched layer, and again, I kind of just eyeballed this, so I figured where I wanted it to go, and I'm going to use these two inks now, so Crumb Cake and Grapefruit Grove. I kind of eyeballed where I wanted it to go, so I kind of put the center at the 3, and then I just made sure that these 2 points were level, and then I put this down here, the magnet, just to hold it in place. And then I kind of decided what I wanted to do first, so I'm going to put the branch on first. And then I'll show you what this is from. This is actually from the Colorful Seasons stamp. So I used the little branch here and then the little buds to fill it in. And this, I think, I wasn't going to do the inside, but I really think it made the card. So I'm going to close this and just pick this up. And again, I'm just going to reline it. You can put it a little bit more in the middle if you want, because you're really only stamping in the top. So I did this in Crumb Cake. So this is the branch. This is in Crumb Cake. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and take this out, flip it around, and fold this over so it's closed. And then I'm going to line up my little flowers. So again, this goes right about there. And then I'm going to do the same thing. So just close this so it's right on top. Now I'm going to ink this up. So in case you haven't opened these new pads, you want to kind of open them like makeup. So you hold one side and you flip it up. Very, very simple. And then I'm going to ink up the flowers. Okay. I'm going to give a press on that. I know I have my other stamp there, so I'm trying to keep my fingers slightly clean. There we go. And then have one more thing to do on that. So once again, I'm going to get out my Memento, and I'm going to just move this over just a little bit because I want to be able to add this sentiment in here. And I just want to make sure it's centered because this was off just a little bit because I didn't do them all at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and ink up my sentiment. And again, that's in Memento ink, and I'm just going to give this a press. This is over there. And if for some reason anything didn't ink the way you wanted to, you could always just add a little bit more ink since it is centered just where it needs to be. And you just press one more time, and then it'll be inked perfectly. So look at that. Super easy. Okay, I'm going to set this aside for 1 second because we have one more little spot we have to finish. So I'm going to pull this out and flip it. And we're going to put that little sentiment onto our card. So just for the sake of doing it, because I did these the other day, such the complete backwards way, I'm going to show you what I did. And you can always do something like this. You just need to make sure you take your time. That's basically the only thing you really have to do. I'm going to pull out this extra plate. Now what I did was, before I get ahead of myself, I'm going to move this over just so I can show you exactly what I did. So I started putting these together without thinking. So I have my little layer here. This is going to be my frame. So I have some Tombow. And I originally was going to go with either some leftover fast fuse or some snail. But when I did one this way, and I had a little bit of trouble kind of lining it up exactly how I wanted to, I thought I'm going to use Tombow because it kind of gives you the ability to be able to wiggle it around a little bit if you need to. So I just put some Tombow on there. And then what I did was I put this down, and I could line it up just exactly how I wanted to without having to worry about if anything is or isn't going to get stuck. So if you ever have a frame that you're really kind of worried about whether or not you lined it up properly, try the Tombow because it does give you the little ability to be able to shift it around if you need to. So there's that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just real quick, just pop some fast fuse on here just to hold this down so I can put it together for you. And I'm going to lay this on. And right now, some people are probably getting real nervous because you're like, you didn't put the sentiment on there. And that's what I thought. And I thought, well, at this point, what do I have to lose? I have to start all over again. So I'm going to pop this open just like that. And what I did was, I put my card right here. Oops, I gotta take this part out. Forgot about that. I put my card right here all the way in the very bottom. Okay, so you can see that's in the very bottom. Okay, and I believe, so these, I think I did this one this way. Let's see if that lines up. Yep, so I put a magnet up here. So again, you're gonna put this in the bottom. You can put it at the bottom, the magnet. You can put it on the side, whatever you wanna do. That right there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ink up my sentiment. Okay, so it's right up top here. I'm going to ink this up. And this is the cool part. If you even were, if you're the kind of person that maybe does these as classes, that you could do these and you could have multiple stamparatus or stamparati as I like to call them, and look how perfect that lined up, just perfectly. Then all you'd have to do is you could have all these plates set up for a party and you wouldn't have to worry about whether or not you had them cleaned or you had to take the stuff off. You could have these set up just for your parties. That way people would have a really, really simple time being able to make things as they go along, and you could even label them. Like you could take this off and be like step 1 on this side, step 2 on that side. You could put it with a Post-it note. So it'd make it really, really easy if you were going to make a lot of cards and you had a class that you were going to do that. Okay, so let me pull this off. Now that we're done, I'm going to put this one back in and my little foam piece, and then I'm going to show you the very last part. So I have this little layer here, which I thought was really cute. However, and again, we did use the whole layer because this is the part that fits on top of it, but I thought it really needed something. So you can do this one of two ways, just depends on what you may or may not have handy. So if you have a white gel pen, you could still take your white gel pen and you could just put some little dots of white like that. But if you don't have your white gel pen, the other thing you could do is you could take your craft white ink pad. And I do have one very specifically for this purpose, but I have blender pens, and you can see this one is stained white, so this is one of my white ones. And what you do is you just dip it, And then you could put little dots. So we'll put a couple on the other end here. That way these little flowers look like maybe something's just going to pop out. Just like that. So you could either use, again, your pen, your blender pen, and your white craft ink, or if you happen to still have a white gel pen, that would work equally as well. So you just put this on the inside, and we will wrap this up. And all I did was I just put, again, you could use some Tombow liquid glue. If you still have some Fast Fuse, you could use that, or you could use some snail. And I just press this onto the inside, just like that. I'm going to give that white a little bit to dry, but then all we're going to do is fold this closed, give this a nice press with our bone folder, and there you have a gorgeous card. So thank you all so much for watching. You can find all of these tips and more on my blog, which is rachthestamper.com. I will put all the measurements and all the specific blender pen colors that I did use for these. And I'm going to have a lot more ideas with these, with the swap. So again, this is the Blended Seasons, which is a gorgeous set to have. You can use this one for spring and summer. There's some wheat for fall, beautiful leaves, Christmas, and this absolutely gorgeous stitch season layering. And so it's got double layering layers in here, which are really, really cool. And then it also has a couple pieces that frame out some of the stamps that go with it. So thank you as always for watching. If you have any questions, you can feel free to send me an email at rachthestamper@gmail.com, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks for watching.